Hello, welcome everybody to this closing already panel at Nextv Series USA 2022. We started the day talking about disruption in the TV industry, and we're going to end the day discussing one of the most disruptive forces in television right now. I could say a lot of things, mention numerous statistics illustrating why connected TV devices are drawing so much attention right now. But we only have 45 minutes, and I really want to leave our four experts joining me here, who are really the experts on this topic, to do all the talking. I certainly have a few burning questions for each of them, so let's introduce them, put those questions to them, sit and discover together what's driving the CTV phenomenon, what challenges remain, what we can expect from this thriving market in the near and long term. You might have noticed, we also have a female-dominated panel, which I'm sure most of you will agree is a refreshing change in such a historically male-dominated industry. So we're really happy whenever that happens. We're really happy about that. Let me introduce them. Susan Agliana is the Director of Business Development, Media Ecosystem Partnerships at Samsung Electronics. Susan joining us from New York. From Irvine, California, Catherine Pond is the Vice President of Business Development at Vizio. Jane Marks, Jace is joining us in a minute. She's around, just having some issues, but we know she's there, so I'll introduce her. Is the Director, Account Management, Business Development, and Content Acquisition at Philo, also joining us from New York. And out of Denver, Colorado, Mark Shepard is the SVP and General Manager, Core DAI at Cannes. Welcome, everybody. Catherine, we'll start with you. Joined Vizio 10 years ago, really back in the days when all TV companies were still hardware vendors. What has it been like witnessing from up close and this sort of huge transformation of a company like Vizio now practically becoming a full TV service operator? What has it been like?
Yeah, it's been really fun. The past 10 years have been a really, really fun ride, not just for me, obviously for Vizio, as we've looked at, like you said, starting as really a hardware company and then shipping our first connected TV platform, I think over 12 years ago now. And really watching the company go through that transformation from hardware to software. And now what I really look at as a holistic entertainment solution, which is, our content partnerships, our software solutions and technology, and our hardware, and kind of being on the forefront of that and being able to impact both the consumer experience, I would say, and the industry as a whole. I know that's something everyone on this panel can certainly identify with. We've had the opportunity to shape the actual experience for consumers in their homes in new and exciting ways, and being on the forefront of that has been really fun and exciting for us.
And you're managing several strategic areas at Vizio. Tell us briefly what your current responsibilities are.
Yeah, sure. At a high level, working on business and a few operational things as well. So really, I think for this group, what's interesting about that is both our content acquisition for our owned and operated service WatchFree+, as well as digital distribution for all of our third-party applications that are on our platform today. So that's really like that amazing part where we're creating and bringing that content into the consumers' homes for this audience today.
Thanks for that. Susan, Samsung is building one of the world's most ambitious streaming video platforms, and your job is to grow this platform. Easy job with so much interest around CTVs these days?
Yeah, complicated question, huh? So I think we need to acknowledge, first of all, that we've seen 10 years of change in the last 2. I think we're going to see more change, but we are all traumatized in this industry from the speed at which things have changed. We're dealing with, let's say, a tipping point, I think, where we have a marketplace that has become crowded from a streaming app perspective. We have a lot of platforms competing in market Certainly from a Samsung perspective, we're a truly global organization, and we're thinking about global, not just a domestic, which is a whole different set of challenges and opportunities there. I think, though, what I'm still excited about is that, we have so much opportunity on the platform side to still shape the user experience and to offer our Samsung customers not just a lean back viewing experience, but a truly immersive experience, whether it's around gaming, whether it's around health. And we think of it not just as a platform, but as a hub of the home where our customers can access everything, including lean in as well. And that's really our priority moving forward as the ecosystem has matured.
Okay, thanks. Jane, you also have content acquisition as a key component of your responsibilities at Philo, where you're also in charge of distribution partnerships with third-party platforms. What do these two roles look like in a day-to-day operation of a vMVPD, and where do you see the growth opportunities?
Yeah, definitely. So it's definitely been interesting. I think Susan touched on a lot of what the change in the industry that we've seen. What's nice about being a part of that kind of lean and flexible team that's doing both is we can very quickly transition focus when we need to one area or another in order to kind of capitalize on what's going on, whether just in our business or in the industry overall. On a day-to-day, it looks like a ton of collaboration, as you would imagine, among different teams at Philo internally and of course externally with our partners. Everything from operations to ads to marketing, and of course with the platform and content partners. That's where the majority of the collaboration comes in. But there's a ton of growth opportunity, I think, because on the BD and platform side, we're able to kind of really shape how the user is experiencing TV, and what the next kind of version of streaming might look like. That's kind of always been our goal at Philo. And then on the content side, we're able to be really flexible to the industry. There's been a ton of changes on the content side in terms of who's licensing what and what customers are expecting, and we can be really flexible and kind of say, what, this would do really, really well on our platform. Let's go after that, and then go back on the platform side and say, how can we, best enable customers to watch it.
Okay. Mark, do you think traditional MVPDs and the new breeds of vMVPDs, we have a good representative here in Philo, do you think they're in direct competition with one another? Or what are you seeing from the perspective of a company like Canon?
Sure. So I'd say it this way. So I think Canoe sits in this really interesting intersection of kind of traditional MVPDs and virtual MVPDs kind of on one side, and then all of the largest programming television groups and their advertisers on the other side. So, and then our job is to make it dead simple for any programming group, from the A's like A&E to I think Warner Brothers Discovery is probably at the end now, right? So from A&E to Warner Brothers Discovery to dynamically insert ads with any one of these MVPDs and reach as many consumers as possible. And I kind of, going back to kind of the 10-year thing that we've just been talking about, in 2 years and 10, and what we were all doing 10 years ago. I mean, I remember, it feels like yesterday, but this was probably 8-9 years ago now. We were struggling to get dynamic ad insertion to work in mid-rolls. We could do pre-rolls, we could do post-rolls, right? But now imagine where we are today. That's just, that's table stakes is overstating how much anybody that comes to the table now is just going to have dynamic ad insertion kind of wherever the programmer wants to put those ads and however much they will kind of want to fill that content up. So I'd say, getting kind of back to the question is, I see them as complementary. So regardless of whether it's a traditional MVPD or a virtual MVPD like Philo, these are really complementary in this sense. So an advertiser wants to reach consumers regardless of whether they're watching on either type of MVPD. And then from our perspective here at Canoe, that's what we kind of do. We just provide enablement and then a really sophisticated level of service assurance and revenue optimization across linear, across VOD, across streaming. And we do this wherever the consumers are watching. So the television programming groups that we represent can really efficiently get their advertisers into their premium content wherever it's playing out. And again, they reach as many people as possible.
Thank you. Susan, what would you say are the main sticking points these days during the negotiations to onboard new content partners into a smart TV platform? Is it more on the business models, the economics, or the issues are more operational in nature? Are more sort of, is it the technical integration side of it?
Yeah, great question. I think there's an assumption that it's always about the economics, but at the end of the day, what we find is that it's very much about a deep technical partnership as well. CTVs are computers, right? At the end of the day. And the technology that runs those, right, is complicated. In order to ensure that our consumers are able to watch the content they want to watch when they want to watch it, we need to provide a fantastic discovery experience. Unfortunately, that is not within our control 100%. We need to collaborate with our partners very deeply in order to ensure that content is actually being surfaced. There is not always a deep understanding of that in the industry, and there are very various reasons, right, why some partners would not participate in that. I think there is outdated concept of a walled garden that has prevented a lot of these content providers from participating in this sort of if you build it, they will come. Where what we're seeing on our platform is that we need to give users that choice, and if we don't give them that choice, those services are just not going to perform as well. It's really that simple. And so we spend a lot of our time on the deal side talking about this and really thinking deeply about how we integrate together for our mutual customers and ultimately for a mutual benefit and mutual revenue growth.
Catherine, the emerging business models in the CTV space are making it really critical for the TV networks to partner with companies like Vizio if they want to expand their distribution. It's part of the disruption that we're describing. It's become such a key distribution channel for them that they have to be there. But don't these partnerships somehow risk undermining the network's more traditional pay TV business? How do you, as a company, balance the need to have consumers involved in your OTT experience with your partnerships with the networks?
Yeah, I love that question because I think there's very much a narrative that seems to indicate that, well, it has to be one or the other, meaning, well, it doesn't make sense for a big network to have their existing linear broadcast and go do a fast channel or and go do an app on a platform like Samsung's or like Vizio's. And that's really not the truth. It's for all of these network partners, and this is why you see them continue to enter the space in a major way, right? I mean, I can call out a couple of the major A networks that you were referencing there that have gone on to launch fast channels, that have gone on to launch applications on the platform. And why? Because it's complementary to their strategy. It doesn't cannibalize their existing pay subs. What it does do, and this is what we've seen on the advertising side, is we are actually able to deliver an incremental audience that they can't reach anywhere else through our platform. And so what they find is, look, if I'm a network that's out there selling these advertisements, I need Vizio as a part of my strategy. It is complementary. It allows me to reach additional consumers. And look, the benefit is the consumer. The winner here is the consumer.
Okay, interesting. By the way, if anyone wants, I'm just addressing questions, but if anyone wants to jump in and reply to what anybody says, you're welcome to do so. Jane, are artificial intelligence or data algorithm techniques being used today to help drive the process of content evaluation or to improve user experience?
Yeah, I think we lean pretty heavily on data to inform a lot of our decisions from like a user perspective at a very basic level. I'd say we take a little bit more of a human approach. You know, I've read articles about companies who are developing new content and they're using AI from everything from like the episode length to the cast to the plot. And for us, I think we have a ton of user data and we know our customer really well. And I think we are making sure that we are kind of branding ourselves as an approachable platform. So a very simple example is our EPG is alphabetical rather than being strictly algorithmic. We do have a number of merchandising spots on platform that are more algorithmically driven and more thematic, but we found through a lot of consumer research that it was most intuitive for customers to just see an alphabetical EPG. Another example is we recently launched our very first Philo original, Boss Moves with Rashida. And we did a lot of research and used a ton of our customer data to kind of inform the decision about what type of content we wanted, down, to the talent itself. Rashida was in a Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, which does really well for us on the platform, and we knew that the genre and the type of show would do really well. But ultimately, while we used a lot of data, it was kind of a human-centric and kind of curated decision that we made. So I think we do a little bit of both.
Okay.
And just to double click on that, I think it's a really good point about the role that AI plays for better or worse in some cases. I heard a gentleman earlier speak to his Netflix experience, saying he's only surfaced cocaine shows because he watched Narcos, right? So I think what we're all realizing is that we do need to solve for those different scenarios, right? We do not want to create just a rabbit hole of the same type of content. And I've heard that feedback from users before, right? Depending on the platform, that I'm not actually being surfaced the content that I would want to watch. And I don't just want to watch pirate shows or Viking shows. I want to have more choice and actually have more of a menu of options to branch out. So I think we all need to be very careful there as we think about how we construct our discovery experiences and what data we're using and at what point of that decision.
Yeah, good point.
I think your call out there too, just to kind of keep going on that, is the combination of all of the amazing technology that all of these companies have, right? But also the human element, which is, there is a human element of, great, we can make the best algorithms in the world, but it does help. And I would assume everyone here as well has a human eye actually going through and looking at this stuff and saying, does this make sense? How can we make this a better experience, right? And there's definitely still value there as well.
Absolutely. I have to agree on that as well. Mark, there's a whole discussion, and we've been touching on this earlier on some of the other panels, as to whether set-top boxes will disappear in the near future. Do you think that the future of television is an app-only world? What's your take on that?
Anybody want to guess where the guy affiliated with traditional MVPDs is going to land on this one?
Please, Mark, tell us more.
Oh, man, nobody knows how this story ends, do they? Well, okay. So here's what I would say, and I love the question because it's a really good one too, right? Because so from our perspective at Canoe, so we've had a long history now of servicing set-top boxes and VOD on set-top boxes and now linear on set-top boxes. But of course, set-top boxes are now supporting apps as well. And so from our perspective, it's like, hey, we'll service kind of any device that runs high quality apps. And think of Charter Spectrum TV or Comcast Xfinity Stream or Cox's Contour, right? All of these apps and devices. So, and here's what's interesting too, is we've seen a huge growth, and this is not probably surprising, but maybe it is if you're not super close to the traditional MVPD side. We've seen a huge growth over the last few years in the use of IP devices across our footprints over and above kind of traditional QAM set-top boxes. And so while, no surprise probably, I don't see set-top boxes themselves disappearing anytime soon, like from our perspective, we're just going to continue to enable and provide revenue optimization over every device we're connected to. But that could be a set-top box running QAM, like an old coaxial cable, right? You stick into the back of it, a set-top box that runs wirelessly over IP, an MVPD app that runs on a smart TV, a dongle, a phone, a tablet, or any other consumer-owned device. And I think though, like from my perspective, and I think Susan, you were saying earlier that the tech is complicated here, and I think that's where we love here to lean in, is that each one of these device types and each one of these apps requires its own bespoke set of like best practices, processes, workflows to ensure that all of these programming groups can actually maximize their advertising yield on that platform. because here's what I know, and I think we all probably intrinsically know this. None of these devices, their apps or the apps on the devices, none of them work exactly the same way. And I experience this every day. None of them break the same way either. They always break differently. And the moment you put in a check to figure out like, oh, we'll catch that next time that happens, which is great, it breaks some different way the next time on the next release, only in, the back left corner of wherever, right? In fact, I was joking with some folks. I literally just stepped out of a meeting where our team was digging into why we were seeing a pattern of low VOD ad yields that affect just one of our almost 100 networks that we service, only on Wednesdays, only on long form content, and only across this small slice of our footprint. I've got like 8 wicked smart engineers in the room, every one of them scratching their heads because we're like, this is
What
different,
was it?
right?
What was it?
We don't know
Yeah.
yet. We don't know yet. We have
you don't know.
theories. We have a couple theories. And so, but they're chasing that down. And that's kind of what we do over here is we watch these systems and these subsystems and these subsystems, right? All based on just tons of transactional data to figure out how do you actually maximize that ad yield back to the programming group. So.
Interesting. Okay. And hope you can sort it out because that's only one.
It's going to be a fun story to tell, right?
Yeah. Make sure to let us know as soon as you figure it out.
We'll follow back in the next iteration here.
Catherine and Susan, I'll ask you the question that probably nobody has dared to ask. I know you've shared a few panels before, and I'm sure no one asked you this question. Samsung, Vizio, obviously competitors in the CTV space. Tell us actually how you're different from one another. Let's put you there to see how you differ from one another. Catherine?
Oh, wow. I'm lucky that I get to go first.
Are you sure? I don't know.
I will start by saying, I've kind of joked that if, when Susan and I have done panels together, we agree on a lot of things, right? We're always going to agree we're going to put the consumer first. We're always going to agree that our content, the content companies we work with are our partners. And so I think it's really an interesting thing to think about is, aside from the business, when we actually look at the TV, when we look at the consumer experience, what are we each bringing to the table? Because we are different, And so one of the things that I would say differentiates Vizio is certainly our home screen user interface. Yes, I would agree, Samsung and Vizio are both doing the same thing when it comes to integrating all of that metadata to help surface content. We have invested very, very heavily in resources and talent over the past year to continue to bring that experience to the forefront. You've heard the saying, content is king. I think context is king, which is really understanding what to surface to which user and when, so that they get the best experience. And, I work with every single one of our heads of engineering on a daily basis now to talk about how we can improve that consumer experience. And I think that's honestly one of the things that Vizio brings to the table, not to mention some of the unique integrations that we've done with voice. And then the other thing that I would also just say from a consumer perspective, and this is an advantage to our content partners as well, we enable both Chromecast and we enable AirPlay as well. So we have consumers who can access all of the amazing things that we have on the platform, whether that's hundreds of apps, whether that is our amazing WatchFree+ service with, hundreds of channels and thousands of assets, or they could go out to the App Store, or they could go out to Google Play and use an app there to get that content onto their TV. And really, it all comes down to putting the consumer at the center for us. And I'll throw it over to Susan. I'm sure she has some thoughts there too.
Yeah, agreed. And putting the consumer first, as always. I think from a Samsung perspective, the way that we are really pivoting our business is, again, thinking about the smart TV as a hub of the home, right? Not just about a lean back experience. And so, as I'm sure you've seen from some recent announcements, we've launched a Game Hub that is a great example of really what we're putting our resources into. We see an incredible opportunity with gaming. We're invested highly in cloud gaming. We've done some excellent partnerships around cloud gaming to have that lean in experience as well. The same thing with Samsung Health. You can absolutely interact with your TV in order to stay healthy, right? And we developed that during the pandemic because we saw the need for that. So we are very much thinking about experiences and what our consumers want and where we can invest our resources from a technology perspective to enable that. And gaming is a perfect example. For anyone familiar with cloud gaming, I think maybe it came too early, right? When it was first launched, from a technical perspective, cloud gaming is really hard. It's really, really hard. So we are trying to crack that, and the opportunity there we just think is incredible, and that will lead to other types of technologies that we can then launch on our platform. I think number two, we are very much focused on the global ecosystem. That certainly has some challenges, right? But we are designing for global citizens, right? So we have to have certain standards, right, in our experience, but we also want to think deeply about that in-market experience as well. And to the point earlier, all of our consumers are humans, right? Humans are local at the end of the day. So we have to double click on every single market that we're going into with a new app. We work very closely with our partners on app expansions. Whether it's HBO or Disney or whoever, that is a very, very complicated process, and one we need to partner deeper on. And yeah, we very much have to think about what markets are next, right? What markets are good for our partners, and what markets are good for us as well, and how we sort of have some sort of unified experience across those. So I think those are some good differences.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've made them clear. So thanks for that. Jane, how are you dealing with the challenges of customer retention and churn reduction that really all streaming services face, but particularly in these times of stiff competition and worsening economic conditions? How are you dealing with them?
Yeah, that's definitely a timely question. I think we're seeing it across a lot of headlines, and just in general, the economic uncertainty feels really palpable in a lot of areas. So we're taking a multi-pronged approach for sure. And I'll speak mainly to the areas that I focus on, but of course, there are a lot of other ones in terms of like customer lifecycle and marketing that are kind of important for a lot of reasons. From a content perspective, I think we make sure that Philo as a platform and as a service to customers doesn't just have like the awesome cable tent poles that we get from our big partners like the Yellowstones, the Better Call Sauls of the world, where it's episodic and people are tuning in weekly. Those are really important because that's, I think, what customers often think of as the cable experience. But we also do try to balance that by having the lean back content, the content that you can kind of just kind of keep on in the background, that you can watch episode after episode and kind of binge. And so having a variety of different types of content, the temple cable stuff, movies, reality content, the cooking shows, that type of thing, I think really helps in these times because people then don't just view this as an expense that might come and go within their budget, but something that's kind of something that they need as a part of their household. And it kind of speaks to what Susan was saying about Samsung being a household hub, something that's really just part of their living room experience, maybe their family life or their life at home. On the platform side, there's definitely a lot of interesting conversations to be had about making sure that the content is discoverable, and we really leverage the features and integrations that we can with our platform partners to ensure that our customers are seeing the complete breadth and depth of the catalog that we offer, right? So it's one thing to make sure we merchandise it on our own platform, and that's of course really important, but there are so many innovations that we've seen on these platforms, both set-top box, connected TV device, smart TV, all of them. And we were talking a little bit about how like once you catch up to the features on one, you've got to equalize it across. So there's a ton of work to be done always there, but making sure that if a customer is going to use the voice feature in their smart TV and they're going to say, hey, I want to watch this movie, that if it's on Philo, they can access it really immediately, and making sure that we're integrated with all the different types of controls that a platform might have, ultimately really helps because customers are then seeing the complete value of their subscription.
Okay, interesting. Mark, let's talk a bit about the business models. What are you seeing in terms of the evolution of streaming business models between SVOD and AVOD alternatives?
Yeah, sure. So I'd start by saying we've seen pretty long-term success at this point with subscription VOD or SVOD networks leveraging dynamic ad insertion to insert promos, thereby driving additional SVOD viewership, right? So that's been happening for a while. In fact, for example, we've seen our SVOD clients get 4x the bump to their promoted program viewing when they run promos on their channels. And we've seen that for years. Then there's kind of a more recent success with AVOD, so ad-supported VOD, inserting promos, pushing to SVOD, and therefore kind of increasing SVOD revenue. So we've seen both of those play out. And I think with that said, what I would submit, and so now this goes into kind of mark opinion land, and I'm not particularly prophetic, so be real careful here. But I would submit that we are somewhere between kind of at or close to the peak of SVOD. And what we're really going to see on the SVOD front now is going to be primarily a fight over share amongst the largest SVOD players. But on the AVOD front, I really believe there's actually still a significant upside because consumers are continuing to migrate to a more cost-effective AVOD option, especially when those platforms are delivering great quality content, reasonable ad loads from respected brands, and they're limiting overexposure of those ads through robust frequency capping controls, right? You put all that together, it's a really compelling offering, especially when you're saving money by getting that content for cheaper or even for free. And so here, kind of last example would be across the AVOD that we service here at Canoe, we're seeing 2/3 of our largest television programming groups at least 90% sold out, with quite a few of that group actually completely sold out. And so what's clear to us is that the consumers they're enjoying their AVOD services and the advertisers are happy to follow suit.
Okay.
Just to add to that, and Mark, I think your opinion is excellent, right? I think, to the point earlier about the tipping point here, right? We have absolutely reached that point of saturation. And I think we're going to see, mergers, acquisitions, consolidation, right, across the board versus that growth spurt that we saw over the past years where every single platform and service was just, gunning for it. I do think, and we see on our platform that there's still incredible value for SVOD. And what's interesting, beyond the big ones, what's interesting is the niche services, right? So we see great affinity for some of these niche services, a Crunchyroll, for example. And we actually see that those may be more sustainable from an SVOD perspective because that's about passion, right? A true user's passion, and it's niche, and they're not going to get it anywhere else. So things like those, right, probably have some more longevity. But yes, absolutely. We've seen now our biggest platforms start talking about AVOD tiers, etc., which I think is a key indicator, to say the least, of what's to come.
And staying on that, Catherine, we keep hearing about growing interest surrounding FAST services. It would be interesting to know if your internal consumption data is somehow corroborating that hype. We know, of course, you can see what's going on in terms of data and metrics. What sort of trends can you spot when you look at the type of content that Vizio users are watching today versus perhaps what they were watching, 1 or 2 years ago?
Sure. And yes, our internal data and trends absolutely corroborate this idea that fast is here to stay. Though I will even caveat that by saying I don't know that that you're going to see those of us in the industry to continue to call it fast that much longer, because we are the new cable TV in many respects here. So what we really look at internally is the tremendous growth. Certainly in 2020, I think across the board, you saw announcements probably from everyone here about the growth in ad-supported viewership of owned and operated properties. Vizio has actually announced that our WatchFree Plus service is actually the #2 ad-supported application on our platform, which is tremendous, right? So that I think is a very, very strong indicator. And then when you ask me about what are consumers actually watching? What do they care about? It's, believe it or not, the thing that you think it would be, it really is. Movies and TV, that is an affinity for the vast majority of consumers. From there, we look into a variety of the different data trends, and this is actually how we decide which new channels we're bringing to our platform. We look at the amount of time spent by genre. We look at whether or not that those viewing times over or under index as compared to the average across the platform. And then we give consumers more of what they already love. So without going too much beyond the movies and TV, I could tell you the top, from the top 5 down, like what the most popular genres are. And we're looking at those and then continuing to deliver more and more of those to consumers.
Okay. Susan, for programmers and content owners who want to be distributed on smart TVs, creating a nice app, filling it up with the best content, designing it with the best possible user experience, those are all important things, of course, but none of that will come from much if their app then gets sort of lost in a crowded UI of a third-party platform. What challenges do these companies and your companies as the platform operators face in terms of discoverability, and what will it take to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I think to start just from the industry perspective, it's a completely different type of talent, right, that you need at your organization, that perhaps was deprioritized before, or for whatever reason, right, simply just sort of delegated to some other department. The talent, that tech talent, is absolutely critical, because if you are a service, you want to launch an app, you need excellent engineers, you need excellent product managers, and it has to be a priority. So I think that's number one, and we've seen a lot of that change happen with our partners as they actually launch their services, sort of realizing how important this element is. It's not just about the content, it's about building that experience and maintaining that experience. And as Jane has said and Mark has said, right, experience across so many different platforms, right, which are all slightly different and all have different programming languages, etc., that you need to keep in mind. So there's quite a heavy lift, to be quite honest, when you are developing a new app, and that has to be accounted for. Second, the user experience, right? And I mentioned before, there has been some, let's say, what I would call outdated thinking around walled gardens, right? And building these apps, right, to just be experiences within themselves and not actually, let's say, growing tentacles into the actual operating system, which creates a better experience for the user. And what we see drives viewership, drives subscriptions 100%. This is absolutely critical. I think that's going to be a journey for some companies to take, because, and I think some are taking it. We've seen some take it even in the last year. But it is a completely different way of thinking about your business, right? And why I'm so excited about the future is, as Catherine mentioned, this is about partnerships, right? This is a true, deep partnership on so many levels. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get there, but that deep partnership is what is going to make those services successful.
Okay. Mark, do you think free movies and free content in general, going back to the discussion, is experiencing some sort of renaissance? And also, what new advertising challenges do programmers face when it comes to selling their inventory in the OTT world?
Yeah, so I'll start by agreeing with Catherine. You're absolutely right. I mean, movies just drive just a tremendous amount of viewership. And we see that, right? Obviously on the SVOD side, that's clear. But on the AVOD side, I mean, the moment that you could hold your remote up and say, show me free movies, I mean, it's just a great way to spend, I remember as a kid just watching Rambo on whether it was TBS or TNT, and it would take the better part of 5 hours probably, but whatever, right? That's how you spent your Saturday afternoon in a humid climate where I grew up. But those movies, like in the last 5 years or so here at Canoe, we've seen probably as a content type or a genre generically, like there's been a tremendous growth in folks that are just watching AVOD supported movies. Now, with that, to your point, comes some advertising challenges. And so one of the key things we drove in on a few years ago was we were noticing that, so let's say your movie has 8, 9 mid-rolls associated to it. Well, if you look at ad fill rates as you progress into that content, oftentimes by the time you get to mid-5 or so, which is about an hour into the content, you're maxed out. There's not much left to place because of the frequency capping controls. So that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. You don't want to release the frequency capping controls just so folks can get the same ad over and over again, break after break after break. So what we've done on our side, working with a bunch of different partners, has been to primarily enable two things. So once your direct sold stuff is kind of out, and the promo stuff or the PSAs that you might also be placing are out, we have created just mechanisms by which you can get programmatic to kind of come in around the edges, where you can get what we kind of call backfill. It's a service that Canoe offers over here. It's lower CPM, but still high quality advertisers that will fill in around those edges, because otherwise, if you don't put something there, that's just perished money, right? That's just money out the door. So maybe it's not your highest CPM, but it's still high quality brands, and it's money coming in the door in mid 8, mid 9, mid 10 in that long form movie. So that's one of the things we've been working on over here.
Okay. Jane, and staying on the sort of business models discussion, we had a panel earlier on today where we discussed how a growing number of ISPs across the US are really looking to fully concentrate today on the broadband business. And instead of building their own MVPD offer, as they would have been not too long ago, they decide to increasingly partner with a vMVPD. I'm wondering, you as a vMVPD, what sort of opportunities are you seeing in these types of partnerships?
Yeah, it's such an interesting audience. It's definitely a big opportunity, I'd say, because it seems that audience is interested in kind of a flexible, low cost, and high value streaming option, which is, I think, what we really view Philo to be. We're $25, so we're on the low end of price, and a huge number of channels, movies, TV, of course, being at the forefront there in terms of content. So it's definitely a big opportunity, and I think it does represent a win-win, right, for those ISPs and other companies kind of in that vertical. They're looking to stem churn in any way they can, and if it's possible to partner in a way that we can add value to their consumers and we can bring more people on board, I think that works really well. We have an active partnership with NCTC, so that enables companies to utilize Philo as a streaming option for their customers. And then some of the larger mid-sized operators in the space, we've also worked with on different ways where we can do that, where they're appealing to specific subsets of their customers or providing kind of value and promotional opportunities there. So something we continue to work on. I think there are some challenges, as you would imagine, just, a virtual MVPD and some of the more traditional providers there, just figuring out exactly how it all works and how to best speak to those customers too. A lot of it is, sign on by the customers and making sure that they're kind of comfortable with what is essentially kind of a hybrid between an old model and a new one. So there are some challenges there, but it definitely represents tremendous opportunity, we think.
Okay. Will be interesting to see how that pans out. We're just last 2-3 minutes, but I think Catherine and Susan, there was a big news story earlier this week, which was some sort of research showing how some of the ads being really addressable ads are not reaching in the end some of the audience, simply because someone has turned their TV off, but the streaming devices connected to it was still on, so the ad was playing, but no one was watching it. There was some sort of waste. What do you make of that? Are you familiar with the issue? Is that a big issue? Just a few seconds, each of you, if you want to touch on that.
I mean, I will happily jump in, because iSpot is one of Vizio's Inscape data partners who helped conduct the research that really was driving that narrative in market. And what was found, yes, it's a huge problem for other people, fortunately not for Samsung or Vizio, in that it's a problem for dongles and sticks. And what's happening is when consumers power off their TV, they don't necessarily also pick up their dongle remote or their stick remote and turn it off. And so that content continues to play in the background, which means those ads were never viewed. That content continued playing, those ads continued playing, and that advertiser didn't realize the value of what they had actually invested in. the beauty of certainly connected TV, which is different than OTT, right? I think in large part, people think about OTT and CTV as the same thing, but it's not. OTT being a number of different screens, certainly you could have mobile, you could have web, but CTV being truly that TV OEM platform that allows consumers, when they turn off that device, the streaming platform shuts down. Those ads aren't playing. And I feel like, it's just, honestly, it's just one more amazing thing that we're able to offer as a part of our partnership to our advertisers, our brands, our agencies, and our content partners, because it's a good experience. So,
Susan?
Yeah, just add agreed, right? Agree. And I think we've seen other research as well, starting actually about 2 years back, that we've reached another tipping point, which is about smart TV sales, right, versus sticks and dongles. So this isn't news to us by any means. What we've seen is that more users are buying smart TVs than the alternatives for a variety of reasons, right? Some of that is price point, some of that is functionality, etc. So this is very much in line with what we've seen. So no surprises, but always excellent PR as well for smart TVs.
Susan, Catherine, Jane, Mark, this is all the time we had for. It's been a fascinating discussion. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise, for making this such an insightful closing panel. A big thanks to our audience. We hope you found this and the preceding sessions today as informative, as engaging as we certainly did. Our next US-focused event will take place later this year. Nextv USA will be really our biggest ever virtual conference anywhere in the world. We'll be bringing together over 2 days, December 6th and 7th. So make sure you mark that on your calendar. Really over 60 leading speakers from the OTT, pay TV, advertising, and sports broadcasting sectors in the States. So stay tuned. We hope to see you then. Again, to Susan, Catherine, Jane, and Mark, thanks a lot. Hope to see you soon in another panel. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.